My name's Matt Johnson. I'm a professor at Cal Poly Humboldt in the Department of Wildlife, and broadly, I'm interested in wildlife and in their habitats, and in particular, wildlife in agricultural ecosystems. So I've been studying birds in vineyards for a long time. 10 years, my lab has been studying barn owls in wine grape ecosystems, and more recently now, we're studying songbirds. I think wine grapes present a unique opportunity for farmers to illustrate how wildlife and agriculture can not just coexist, they can actually mutually benefit each other. And there's lots of insect-eating birds in vineyards. So we're really fascinated about this opportunity for these insect birds to help contribute to ecosystem and pest control services in these wine grape systems.
I'm Danny Karp. I'm a professor at UC Davis, and I work on conservation in agricultural systems. So we want to know whether birds are eating pests in vineyards, how we can recruit them onto vineyards optimally, and then we need to have a good system where we are promoting birds thriving throughout their lives as they're existing in these vineyard systems.
My name is Eleanor MacDonald. I'm a graduate researcher at Cal Poly Humboldt, and I am currently studying birds and insect communities in Napa Valley vineyards. My research is looking at the addition of songbird nest boxes and if that attracts insect-eating birds such as western bluebirds and tree swallows, and if that in turn helps manage insect pests.
So to test this, in 2023, we surveyed 20 vineyards, 10 with existing nest boxes and 10 without, and we did this by conducting bird counts and monitoring insects with sticky traps. Then, in 2024, before the songbird breeding season, we added nest boxes to the 10 vineyards that previously did not have them and surveyed them again.
So based off of our findings, we found that putting songbird nest boxes in the vineyards that previously did not have them attracted a significantly higher abundance of western bluebirds and tree swallows to these vineyards in just 1 year. So if you build it, they will come.
My name is Ivo Jeremaz. I am a grape grower and winemaker at a family-owned winery called Grgich. We are in Napa Valley. We come from former Yugoslavia, and we grew up farming everything that we ate on our farm, and we never used chemicals. So when we came to this country, for us that was natural farming. We strongly believe there's no healthy plant without very rich bird life. And for us, we measure success of farm, how noisy farm is. So when you come to healthy farm, you hear insects, you hear birds. If you come to dead farm, chemically farm, you're not gonna hear that. Everyone is occupied, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so here's a little tree swallow nestling.
Yeah.
My name is Stephanie Kunkel with Chappellet Vineyards. I'm the viticulturalist here. Don and Molly Chappellet established the property here about 1967. Biodiversity is huge here at Chappellet. It really honestly takes a load off of us because those animals are doing work that we don't have to do. When the biologists at Cal Poly Humboldt and UC Davis installed more bird boxes here, there was more of a presence. I definitely saw more. Was it in my head? Apparently not, because they did take counts and they have confirmed that more birds are in our vineyard than previous. So I would say as a whole, the nesting boxes were a complete success.
My name is Rebecca Jane. I am the assistant winemaker here at Joseph Phelps. This is a really unique and historic property that we're standing on. It was originally a 600-acre cattle ranch. Today we have 130 acres planted, surrounded by hundreds more acres of protected wildlands. We feel that inviting biodiversity into our vineyards is not only beneficial, but it's really imperative in order to continue making wines of outstanding quality, especially in the face of extreme climate events or pathogen pressure. We have to have a more resilient system, and biodiversity is a key part of that. We noticed pretty much right away that the boxes were being occupied. So in this block right here, these boxes were all new in 2023. And just a few weeks into the project, really, the viticulturist and I came down and were checking for occupancy, and right away we knew that some folks had taken up residence because some of the swallows were diving in front of us and flying overhead and, letting us know that that was their space now and their home. So it was pretty quick, and it was really amazing to see.
So we're collecting these fecal samples from the, in this case, tree swallow nestlings. This is a really big part of the study because with genetic methods, we can identify what they're eating. We can take those fecal samples and work with our collaborators at UC Riverside to do genetic metabarcoding and figure out what insects are inside those fecal samples.
We found that both the tree swallows and the western bluebirds are consuming insect pests, particularly pests that are vectors of disease, such as Pierce's disease and red blotch. And so we found that they are indeed eating the three-cornered alfalfa hoppers, they're eating blue-green sharpshooters, they're also eating vine mealybugs, and not only are the adults eating them, but they're feeding them to their nestlings as well.
Importantly, data from Sticky Traps suggests that nest box installation to attract bluebirds and swallows was also associated with an approximately 23% reduction in pest abundance in vineyard interiors, and that this reduction was most pronounced at sites roughly 400 meters or more away from riparian habitat, which may reflect that boxes facilitate bird activity in those interior areas where nesting opportunities are otherwise scarce.
We are closely monitoring all of our vineyards for red blotch virus, which is spread by the three-cornered alfalfa hopper, or tika. And hearing the results of the study that the songbirds are eating tika amongst other potentially damaging insects has been so encouraging for us. It's this intuitive thing that birds are beneficial for eating insects and controlling pests, but having scientific information to back that up has been really powerful for us.
I do consider birds part of the pest management strategy. If you're another grower considering installing bird boxes, I would absolutely support it. They can be nothing but help.
So it's wonderful to know that these birds are providing an ecosystem service to the land managers, and it's also super endearing that not only the adults are eating vineyard pests, but they're feeding them to their nestlings, and so these tiny baby birds are helping provide an ecosystem gift to the vineyard managers.
Some of our research has examined how the birds are selecting nest boxes, and this is really important because it gives us an opportunity to give recommendations to farmers about where they should put those nest boxes.
So my name is Fatima Jam'a. I'm a graduate student at Cal Poly Humboldt, and my research focuses on bluebirds in vineyards and how they choose their nesting sites each year. So birds will oftentimes pick up on cues from other birds. They'll engage in this behavior called prospecting, where they'll go check out other nest sites and they'll see how other birds are doing. So my research is whether western bluebirds will use these social cues to determine whether or not they would like to breed at a nesting site the following year.
So I am Kristen Belair. I am winemaker emeritus at Honig, Vineyard and Winery, and currently Director of Wine Growing and Sustainability. Honig is a family-owned and operated vineyard and winery and very committed to sustainability. My perspective on inviting biodiversity, and in particular birds, into the vineyard is probably primarily as biodiversity really helps create a more resilient ecosystem. Farming is not a natural system in and of itself. We're disturbing that ecosystem, and everything that we can do to help rebalance that is going to be better for the farm and better for the environment.
We played sounds of bluebird song and calls as well as baby calls from nest boxes in vineyards. And we set up cameras on those boxes to see if western bluebirds would visit those boxes. And what we found is that they did in overwhelming numbers. They were really keen on checking out those boxes with that perceived social information. What was surprising is that the following year, when we actually looked at occupancy of those boxes, it was relatively evenly spread across boxes that had no sound playing for them, as well as boxes that did have sound playing from them. So that was a bit of a surprising outcome. So it does seem that social cues are useful for bluebirds when initially prospecting a site. But what actually mediates their decision to nest there seems to be the local habitat that's present at that site. it may be best to place your boxes in an area that's not too far away from trees, but also not super close to trees, because they do prefer semi-open habitat, particularly when foraging. And we also don't want to place them too close to large patches of forest and trees where predators may reside and may predate those nest boxes.
We do our best effort to maintain all the trees as healthy as we can here on property. And that does leave some oak trees in the middle of vineyard blocks. Is that a bad thing? Maybe for a couple of vines, they'll struggle in the shade. They might have more competition against the roots of the trees, but overall, we do think it's a benefit to have that biodiversity in the vineyard. The tree itself is its own habitat for insects, birds, and other creatures.
We do consider birds as part of an integrative pest management strategy, and I think that that is being borne out by the research. When I've added new boxes, if it's an environment that they like, they move in really quickly. So we're going to be following our boxes and seeing where birds like to be and where they don't, and then moving boxes around as we see fit.
So one of the strong themes that has emerged from our research is that these natural habitats are really a big part of the story. The nest boxes are more likely to be occupied when there is some natural habitat nearby but not too close. So what that says to us is that the diversity of the landscape is really vital to the delivery of these pest control services on the farm.
Baby birds are considered ugly by a lot of people, especially the little altricial ones. And I think this field work is really important in changing people's perception of that. Once you have them in the hand and you really just get to observe them up close, they melt your heart. It's inevitable.
What I am very fascinated by is how humans are affecting the behavior of animals and how those changes in behavior potentially affect the ecosystem. So with my project, I am studying the effect of road noise on birds and their movement. So for my study, I was working in these same vineyard ecosystems, and I was doing a noise experiment where I was putting the speakers behind the nest box, playing road noise at pretty realistic levels, and also had GPS tags on the birds. So these are GPS backpacks that we would put on the birds, and we can see where they're moving. I also wanted to know if it's affecting their ability to eat insect pests potentially in the vineyard. So I put some mealworm trays out near the nest box and also away from the nest box. I wanted to know if when noise was playing, birds were eating mealworms farther away from the noise, if they were being bothered by that noise.
One of the really cool things about this project is all of the really cutting edge technology we're employing to study every facet of these birds' lives in vineyards. We have the GPS backpacks telling us down to the minute where every different bluebird and swallow is moving. We've got the perch monitors telling us when they're going into the box, when they're coming out of the box, how much prey they're delivering to their babies. And then we've got the next generation DNA sequencing of their poop telling us exactly what they're eating. So with all this information together, we can really begin to understand for the first time exactly how these birds are functioning in these vineyard ecosystems and what benefits they might be providing to the growers themselves.
Preliminary results show that when there was no noise playing, the mealworms that we placed behind the nest box were more likely to be eaten. So it seemed like, for the most part, bluebirds like to eat food behind their nest boxes, which is usually in the vineyards, which is great. However, when we were playing the noise, those mealworms behind the nest box were less likely to be eaten because they were very close to the noise. So it seems like noise is actually shifting where the birds are actually foraging for insects, which is something important that managers might want to consider when they're deciding where to place their nest boxes.
I think something really powerful about having the birds here is that it's something so visible to everyone who visits the property. You know, whether you're coming here for a tasting, whether you're coming to work, you can hear them singing, you can see them flying overhead. It's this really tangible indicator that we're bringing life to our vineyards and that we're supporting that system. I brought my family here for a tasting and it was just incredible. You know, we're sitting up top looking down on the slopes and we could see the birds. We could see them flying around, we could see their activity, and it just adds more to that experience of being here, and it's great for our vineyards.
In addition, we do have data on where the birds are moving just in relation to the vineyard. So what we have learned is that bluebirds tend to stay closer to the nest box, especially the female bluebirds will forage within a short amount of space within the nest box because they're more actively feeding their babies. Tree swallows, on the other hand, will travel kilometers away and they'll seek bodies of water such as ponds or lakes where they will fill their mouths full of aquatic insects and bring them back to their babies, and they'll make these trips many times in one day.
We're figuring out exactly where these birds are going. Are they staying within the vineyard and eating lots of pests? Turns out the bluebirds are. Are they sometimes venturing really, really far off? The tree swallows will fly kilometers away to visit a reservoir, eat some aquatic insects, and come back. And then what happens when the weather changes?
We found that heat waves can be really bad for nestlings. About half as many nestlings survive when it gets really hot. And when it gets hot, I go under a tree to seek shade. Would this help birds on vineyards as well? Our data suggests it would. We found that even isolated trees and small forest patches provide enough shade to dramatically reduce temperatures for birds. During heat waves, we found that bluebirds seek out the shade. If natural areas are nearby, then they are less likely to lose weight during heat waves, but there's also a cost. If parents are sheltering under trees, then they are also visiting their nestlings less often and the nestlings grow less. All in all, though, our work suggests it's important to provide refuges for birds in a warming world. Keeping nature in and around the farm can help.
It's been a real pleasure to work with biologists from Cal Poly Humboldt and UC Davis. You know, Joseph Phelps has a long history of working with academia, and we care very deeply about supporting research, especially as it pertains to vineyard ecology. It's a great opportunity for us to be able to learn with you, so getting those results as you see them and talking about it and slowly incorporating it, I think is really powerful. We love science.
Being out here and doing this work is something that is near and dear to my heart because I want to do something to help contribute to the protection of these habitats and these ecosystems. And it just makes me happy to be out here. It's lovely to be out in the field. It's inspiring, and it's really healing to be out in nature and be doing something to protect something that you love.